His pregnant wife left her wedding ring on his pillow, and by the time Boston Mafia boss Declan Shaw understood why the woman he had broken was already gone. What kind of pain makes a woman carrying your child disappear into the night instead of asking you to save her? That morning rain crawled down the penthouse windows like tears Declan had forgotten how to shed. The city below still feared his name. Politicians still answered his calls. Men still lowered their eyes when he entered a room. But on his bed sat a velvet box, 2 rings, a letter, and a sonogram of a daughter he never knew existed. This is not just a story about betrayal. It is about pride, silence, regret, and the love a man must earn after destroying it. Stay until the end, because every choice has a price. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. Before the rings, before the letter, before the sonogram slipped from Declan Shaw's shaking hands, there had been one final night when Nora Bennett Shaw tried to stand beside him and pretend her heart was not breaking. The Shaw Legacy Foundation Gala took over the grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel every spring, but that year the room looked less like a charity event and more like a kingdom dressed in candlelight. Gold chandeliers burned above polished floors. Tall windows looked out over the black water of Boston Harbor where rain tapped softly against the glass and tugboats moved like shadows beyond the docks. White roses spilled from crystal vases on every table. Waiters in black jackets moved with silver trays of champagne. A string quartet played near the staircase, the music smooth enough to cover secrets. Everyone in that ballroom knew the truth. The foundation fed children, funded hospitals, and rebuilt neighborhoods after winter fires. It also washed blood from money before the money entered polite society. Politicians smiled under the lights. Judges shook hands with men they pretended not to recognize. Developers laughed too loudly beside union bosses with scarred knuckles and expensive watches. Police commanders stood near the bar, careful not to drink too much, careful not to say too little. The room was full of people who had built their lives on silence, and at the center of it all stood Declan Shaw. He was 39 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been made around the shape of power itself. His dark hair was combed back from a face too hard to be called handsome in any gentle way. His eyes were gray, the cold gray of Boston Harbor before a storm, and when they moved across a room, conversations shifted around them. Men did not fear Declan because he shouted. They feared him because he never had to. The Shaw family had controlled parts of Boston for 3 generations. On paper, they owned shipping companies, construction firms, private security contracts, restaurants, warehouses, and half a dozen charities with glossy websites and smiling children on the front page. Beneath the paper, they controlled docks, crews, favors, debts, silence, and the kind of loyalty that came from knowing what happened when loyalty failed. Declan had not inherited an empire. He had inherited a wounded animal and taught it to hunt again. His father had been shot outside an East Boston restaurant when Declan was 22. By 25, Declan had taken out the men who ordered it. By 30, he had turned a street-level family business into a corporate machine with lawyers instead of soldiers and city contracts instead of back-alley threats. By 39, no major waterfront deal moved in Boston unless Declan Shaw allowed it to breathe. That night, he stood near a column wrapped in white roses, speaking with Senator Russell Pike and 2 developers who had spent the past year begging for access to the harbor project. Pike was red-faced from champagne, though not drunk enough to forget who paid for his campaign ads. He held his glass with both hands as if steadiness could pass for courage. "The rezoning committee is nervous," Pike said. "A few environmental groups are making noise about the harbor expansion." Declan looked past him toward the rain-slick windows. "Noise is useful," he said. "It gives people something to stop hearing." The first developer chuckled. The second looked at his shoes. Pike cleared his throat. "There are signatures we still need." Declan turned his eyes back to him. The senator stopped breathing for half a second. You'll have them by Friday, Declan said. Pike nodded. Friday. Good. Declan lifted his glass. Then by summer the docks belong to men who understand how to use them. No one asked what he meant. No one in that circle was innocent enough to need the explanation. Across the ballroom, Nora Bennett Shaw stood beside a window and watched her husband rule the room as if he had been born from marble and smoke. She wore an emerald green gown with long sleeves and a high waist that hid the curve of her stomach. Under the lights, the silk looked rich and fluid, but against her skin it felt too tight, too heavy, too warm. Diamonds glimmered at her ears. Her hair was pinned in soft waves at the nape of her neck. Her makeup hid the shadows beneath her eyes, but nothing could hide the way her fingers trembled around the stem of her untouched champagne glass. No one had noticed she had not taken a sip all night. No one except the woman who hated her for it. Nora rested one hand lightly over her middle, then caught herself and lowered it. The movement had become instinct lately, a small shield, a secret prayer. 6 months pregnant, and still she moved through her marriage like a woman hiding contraband. Her daughter shifted beneath her ribs. Nora inhaled slowly through her nose. Not here, baby girl. Not now. The doctor had told her to avoid stress. He had said it gently, as if stress were a coat she could choose not to wear. Avoid public events. Avoid long periods on your feet. Avoid emotional distress. Rest as much as possible. Tell your husband immediately. Make a plan. Nora had smiled, nodded, taken the printouts, and gone home to a penthouse where her husband had already left for a meeting before sunrise and returned after midnight. She had tried to tell him. The memory pressed into her as sharply as the ache at the base of her spine. That morning the rain had been falling over Boston in silver sheets. Declan's office had smelled of leather coffee and the faint spice of his cologne. He stood behind his desk in shirt sleeves, phone pressed to his ear, staring down at a file full of names Nora knew better than to read. A half-finished espresso sat cold near his hand. She had waited in the doorway with the sonogram envelope held against her chest. When he finally ended the call, she stepped inside. Declan. He did not look up. I have 10 minutes before Cole arrives. I only need 5. That's what people say before they ask for 20. His tone had not been cruel. That was the worst part. It had been automatic, careless. A man swatting away a fly before he even knew it had landed. Nora swallowed and came closer. This matters. He opened another folder. Everything matters today. She stared at the top of his bowed head. Once he had lifted that head when she entered any room. Once he had crossed crowded restaurants just to touch her lower back and ask if she was warm enough. Once he had sent men out in a snowstorm because she mentioned craving cannoli from a bakery in the North End. Now she could stand 3 feet away from him carrying his child, and he could not spare her his eyes. This is about us, she said. That made him pause. For a moment, hope rose in her chest. Then his office door opened. Cole Archer entered with 2 men behind him and a tablet in his hand. Cole had been Declan's right hand for 8 years, loyal, sharp, the kind of man who noticed everything and commented on almost nothing. He saw Nora. He saw the envelope. He saw her face. His expression changed. Sorry, Cole said. I can come back. Declan's attention had already shifted. No. Stay. We need to settle the union issue before noon. Nora's fingers tightened around the envelope. Declan glanced at her, then finally, but his eyes were already somewhere else. Tonight, he said. After the gala. Nora almost laughed. After the gala. After the meeting. After the call. After the crisis. After the Empire stopped needing him. There was always an after, and she had started to understand that after was where he put the things he did not want to face. She turned to leave. In the hallway, Madeline Shaw stood with a coffee cup in one hand and satisfaction in her eyes. Madeline was 61, though she carried herself like age was a negotiation she had won. Her silver blonde hair was pulled into a perfect twist. Her cream suit looked soft enough to touch and expensive enough to insult anyone who tried. She had the beauty of a blade kept clean for display, elegant only until it cut. Nora Madeline said, "You look tired." Nora held the envelope tighter. "Good morning, Madeline." Madeline's gaze dropped to the envelope, then to Nora's waist. A small silence opened between them. Nora felt her pulse jump. Madeline smiled. "Declan has a difficult day," she said. "I hope whatever this is can wait." Nora stepped around her. "It has waited long enough." Madeline's voice followed her down the hall. Some women confuse timing with importance. Now, hours later in the ballroom, Nora could still hear that sentence. Some women, not wives, not mothers, not daughters-in-law. Some women. To Madeline Shaw, Nora had always been a soft thing in a hard house. A pretty mistake Declan had made when grief and desire clouded his judgment. Madeline never said it plainly, not where anyone could quote her. She never needed to. Her cruelty arrived dressed as concern, wearing pearls and carrying a family name sharp enough to draw blood. Nora lifted her glass to her lips, but stopped before the champagne touched her mouth. Across the room, Declan laughed at something Senator Pike said. Not a real laugh. Nora still knew the difference. A real laugh from Declan was rare and low and almost unwilling, the kind that escaped him before he could lock it away. This laugh was performance. Polished. Measured. Another tool. Once she had thought she could reach the man beneath the tools. The first time Nora met Declan, it had been raining then too. 3 years earlier, at a fundraiser for a children's hospital, she had been working the event as a public relations consultant. She had spilled coffee on a donor list 5 minutes before the speeches began and had been crouched behind a registration table trying to dry paper with cocktail napkins when a pair of black shoes stopped in front of her. A deep voice said, "That list looks dead." She had looked up, embarrassed and annoyed, ready to tell the stranger to move along. Then she saw him. Declan Shaw, heir to a name half of Boston whispered, and the other half pretended not to know. He stood over her in a tailored coat, rain still shining on his shoulders, his expression unreadable. Nora had lifted the ruined papers. Not dead, she said, just severely wounded. His mouth had twitched. That tiny, almost smile had changed her life. He had helped her reprint the list. He had stayed through the event. He had sent coffee to her office the next morning with a note that read, "For future emergencies." He had courted her with a patience that felt old-fashioned and dangerous at the same time. Dinners in quiet corners, walks through Beacon Hill after midnight, his coat over her shoulders, his hand at her back, his voice in the dark telling her that with him, nothing would touch her. She had believed him. She had not understood then that sometimes the thing that hurts you is not what your husband fails to protect you from. Sometimes it is what he becomes. "Nora, darling." Madeline's voice came from beside her. Nora straightened before turning. Madeline stood close enough that no one watching could call the conversation anything but intimate. A mother checking on her daughter-in-law. A family moment. Soft. Elegant. False. "You've been standing alone for nearly 20 minutes, Madeline said. "I'm enjoying the view. The harbor is lovely, though I find it strange you prefer the windows to your husband's side." Nora looked toward Declan. "He seems occupied. He is always occupied. That is the nature of men who carry real responsibility." Nora's daughter kicked again, stronger this time. She pressed her palm against her side before she could stop herself. Madeline saw. Her eyes sharpened. "Are you ill?" she asked. "No. You look pale." "I'm fine." Madeline sighed, a soft little sound that managed to make concern feel like judgment. "You have said that often lately. I am beginning to wonder if you know what fine means." Nora turned fully toward her. I know what it means. Good. Madeline smiled. Because Declan needs steadiness tonight. The harbor expansion is delicate. Senator Pike is nervous. Several men in this room are watching for weakness. Then they should look somewhere else. Madeline tilted her head. For one brief second, something like amusement touched her face. There she is, she murmured. I wondered if you were still in there. Nora said nothing. Madeline stepped closer, her perfume cool and floral. When I married Declan's father, I learned quickly that the wife of a Shaw man is not merely a wife. She is architecture. She supports weight quietly. She does not crack where people can see. Nora's throat tightened. Maybe she should not have to crack at all. Madeline's smile faded. Naive. The word was nearly gentle. Nora felt it anyway. Madeline looked across the room at Declan. Her face softened, but not with warmth. With ownership. My son was 22 when I washed his father's blood from his shirt. Do you know what he did afterward? Nora did not answer. He stood in the kitchen for 6 hours and did not speak, not one word. Then he asked me what needed to be done. Madeline turned back to Nora. I taught him not to break. I taught him that grief was private and power was public. I taught him that sentiment kills men in our world. Our world, Nora repeated quietly. Yes, Madeline said. Our world. The one you married into. The baby shifted again. Nora's hand curled against her gown. Madeline's gaze followed the movement, and this time there was no mistaking the calculation in her eyes. Be careful, Nora. With what? With whatever story you are telling yourself about love being enough. Before Nora could answer, applause rose near the stage. The foundation director, a sleek woman with a bright smile and frightened eyes, was announcing the first speech. Guests drifted toward their tables. Declan moved with Senator Pike Cole at his shoulder, every step, easy, controlled, absolute. He passed within 10 feet of Nora. For one moment his gaze touched her, not held, touched, then moved on. It was such a small thing, so ordinary now, so impossible to explain to anyone who had not lived inside a love that died by inches. Nora stood very still. Madeline leaned close. Smile, dear, she whispered. People are watching. So Nora smiled. She sat at the head table beside her husband through 3 speeches, 2 award presentations, and a video montage of children smiling in hospital beds, because the Shaw Foundation paid for things the city would not. Declan's hand rested on the table near hers, but never reached for it. His ring caught the candlelight. Hers felt heavy enough to bruise. A waiter filled glasses. Nora turned hers upside down before he could pour. Declan noticed that. At least she thought he did. His eyes flicked to the glass, then to her face. You all right? He asked under the applause. 2 words, barely more than habit. Nora looked at him. Really looked. There were faint lines near his eyes she did not remember from their wedding photos, a small scar near his jaw from a fight he never explained. A weariness in his shoulders that power had hidden from everyone but her. For half a second, the love she still carried for him rose up so violently it hurt. Tell him now. Tell him before Madeline poisons this too. Nora opened her mouth. Declan, I need to tell you something. His phone vibrated against the table. He glanced down. Cole leaned slightly toward him. Union vote, Cole murmured. They moved it up. Declan's face closed. He picked up the phone. Nora stopped speaking. Declan stood. 5 minutes. He left the table without hearing the sound she made. It was not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Madeline, seated on Declan's other side, dabbed the corner of her mouth with a napkin. You must learn not to choose moments when the city is at stake. Nora stared at the empty chair beside her. What about when I am? Madeline looked at her. For once, she did not answer. Declan returned 10 minutes later. The speeches ended. The music swelled again. Guests rose from their tables and moved back into the ballroom with fresh drinks and fresh lies. Nora remained seated until the pressure in her chest eased. She told herself she could get through one more hour. One more hour, then she would go home. She would wait in the bedroom. She would put the sonogram in Declan's hand. She would make him hear her. Then Senator Pike stumbled into the center of the gathering with his champagne glass raised and his cheeks flushed. Declan. He called, voice too loud. Conversation softened around him. Declan turned polite smile in place. Russell. Pike spread his arms as if he were among brothers, not predators. I have to ask what everyone in this room has been too polite to say. A few men chuckled. Nora felt Madeline go still beside her. Pike looked from Declan to Nora and back again. When are you giving Boston a Shaw air? The room reacted in layers. First laughter, then curiosity, then silence. Nora's fingers went cold. Declan could have ended it with a look. He could have smiled and said, My wife is not a topic for public discussion. He could have crossed the room, taken Nora's hand, and reminded everyone that even kings have sacred ground. Instead, he looked at his glass. He swirled the whiskey once. Madeline watched him like a woman waiting for a well-trained dog to obey. Declan lifted his eyes. An heir, he said, requires more than blood. The laughter died completely. Nora stood near the edge of the head table, one hand gripping the back of her chair. Declan's voice carried across the room, calm and smooth. It requires a woman who understands the life she chose. Someone steady under pressure. Someone strong enough to carry the Shaw name without folding every time the room gets too cold. A faint heat crawled up Nora's neck. Pike blinked suddenly, less amused. Declan continued, and each word seemed to move through the ballroom before striking her. Legacy is not built by fragile people. It is not built by emotion or exhaustion or the need to be reassured at every difficult turn. Nora's vision blurred at the edges. Her daughter kicked once, hard. I have seen men lose everything because they let softness into the wrong rooms, Declan said. The next Shaw deserves better than that. The silence after was almost beautiful in its cruelty. No one knew where to look. Some guests stared into their drinks. Some pretended not to understand. One woman near the flowers covered her mouth, not in laughter, but in shock. Cole stood near the bar, his expression unreadable, though his jaw had gone tight. Nora looked at Declan. He had not raised his voice. He had not called her name. He had not pointed. He had not needed to. Everyone knew. Madeline's lips curved. That smile finished what Declan's words had started. Nora understood then. This was not just neglect, not just distance, not just a husband lost in work and power. This had been shaped, fed, encouraged. Madeline had spent months teaching Declan to look at Nora and see weakness. And Declan had learned. Pike coughed and tried to laugh it away. Well, I suppose that is one way to put it. Declan turned back to him as if nothing had happened. The harbor vote, he said. You'll handle it. Pike nodded quickly. Of course. The room breathed again. Music resumed. Glasses lifted. People moved on because powerful men are allowed to make other people bleed in public so long as the carpet stays clean. Nora did not move. Her heart beat too fast. Her chest felt tight. Her baby shifted restlessly beneath the silk. She could smell roses, candle wax, whiskey perfume rain. Declan was 20 feet away, 20 feet and farther than he had ever been. She waited for him to look at her. He did not. Something inside Nora went very quiet. Not numb, not broken. Quiet. The kind of quiet that settles over a battlefield after the last shot, when the body has not yet understood it is wounded, but the soul already knows. She placed her untouched glass on the table. Madeline noticed. "Nora," she said softly. Nora turned to her. The older woman's face was serene. "If you are feeling unwell, perhaps you should go home." There it was. The final kindness. The final insult. Nora looked toward Declan one last time. He stood under the chandelier, surrounded by men who needed him, obeyed him, feared him. His shoulders were straight. His voice was calm. He looked every inch the king of Boston. And Nora, carrying his daughter beneath her heart, finally saw the truth. A king who cannot protect his wife from his own cruelty has no kingdom worth saving. She picked up her clutch. She walked through the ballroom without rushing. Every step took effort. Her back ached, her ribs hurt, her heart beat too hard, but her chin stayed lifted. She passed the white roses, the gold lights, the senators, the judges, the men who had laughed and then pretended they had not. At the doors, Cole saw her. His eyes narrowed. Mrs. Shaw. She paused only long enough to meet his gaze. "Tell Declan I went home." Cole looked past her toward Declan. Did you? Nora's mouth curved in something too sad to be a smile? No. Then she stepped out into the hallway. The sound of the gala softened behind her, turning into music through walls, laughter behind glass, a life she had tried so hard to survive. In the lobby, the marble floor reflected the chandelier light like water. A doorman opened the front doors, and cold Boston rain rushed in. Nora walked into it. The rain hit her face, ruined her makeup, dampened the expensive silk at her shoulders. For the first time all evening, she could breathe. The Shaw car pulled up beneath the awning. The driver opened the door. Penthouse Mrs. Shaw. Nora looked back through the hotel windows. Inside, Declan was still glowing beneath all that gold, still speaking, still blind. She lowered herself into the back seat and placed both hands over her stomach. Her daughter moved beneath them. Nora whispered, "I heard you." The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Ma'am?" She lifted her eyes. "Take me to the South End apartment." He hesitated. "That property is private. So am I." The driver looked at her for one more second, then nodded. As the car pulled away from the hotel, Nora watched the lights shrink behind rain-streaked glass. She did not cry. Tears belonged to the woman who had still hoped Declan would turn around. That woman had stayed behind in the ballroom. Nora pressed her wedding ring with her thumb, feeling the circle of metal that had once meant forever. By the time the Shaw car turned onto the narrow street in the South End, Nora had stopped looking back. The apartment was on the 4th floor of an old brick building Declan owned through one of his holding companies. It was not home. It was not even warm. It was the kind of place powerful men kept for emergencies, quiet meetings, and secrets that needed walls but not memories. The driver helped her out beneath a broken awning while rain slid down the collar of her gown. "Should I wait, Mrs. Shaw?" Nora looked at him. His name was Patrick. He had driven her for nearly 2 years. He had seen her leave parties alone, seen her sit in silence after charity dinners, seen Declan take phone calls in the back seat while Nora stared out the opposite window. Patrick had never asked questions because men in Declan Shaw's world were trained not to. "No," she said. He hesitated. "Mr. Shaw will ask where you are." Nora held his gaze through the rain. "Then tell him the truth." Patrick frowned slightly. "I don't know where I am going." The old man's face softened. Not enough to be pity, enough to be human. "Yes, ma'am." He waited until she entered the building, then drove away. Nora climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, the other pressed beneath her ribs. The baby had gone still, or maybe Nora had become too frightened to feel her. Her heart beat too hard, each pulse thick and uneven. She paused on the 3rd landing and closed her eyes. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. The doctor had told her that panic could raise her blood pressure. Stress could trigger contractions. Fear could do things to the body that love could not undo. But the body did not understand instructions when the soul had just been humiliated in a ballroom full of strangers. On the 4th floor, Nora entered the code Declan had once given her and stepped into darkness. The apartment smelled of dust leather and old heating pipes. No lamps were on. No food waited in this kitchen. No flowers sat on the table. The windows looked down over wet streets where headlights stretched across puddles like broken gold. She locked the door behind her. Only then did her knees weaken. Nora caught herself on the back of a chair and laughed, once a small cracked sound that frightened her more than crying would have. She was still wearing the emerald gown, still wearing diamonds Declan had bought after forgetting their 2nd anniversary, still wearing the wedding ring he had placed on her finger while promising that nothing in his world would ever touch her. Nora pulled off the earrings first. They hit the table with 2 sharp clicks, then the necklace, then the bracelet, then the heels. Each piece removed felt less like undressing and more like escaping a role she had been dying inside. In the bedroom, she found an old suitcase in the closet. It was black plain practical, not the matching designer luggage Declan's staff used when they packed for weekend trips to Nantucket or New York. That luggage belonged to Mrs. Shaw. This suitcase belonged to Nora Bennett. She changed into jeans that no longer buttoned a soft gray sweater and sneakers. The sweater stretched tight over her belly. For the first time in months, she did not try to hide it. "There you are," she whispered, looking down. Her daughter answered with a faint flutter. Nora pressed a hand over the movement. I know, sweetheart." She packed quickly because if she slowed down, thought would catch her. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters, underwear, socks, a wool coat, a bottle of prenatal vitamins, the blood pressure medication she hated taking because it made her dizzy, a folder of medical reports, her passport, her birth certificate, cash she had withdrawn in small amounts over the past 4 months, a credit card in her maiden name Declan did not know about, the burner phone she had bought from a shop in Quincy after Madeline deleted 1 too many voicemails from Declan's phone. From the desk drawer, Nora removed 2 journals. One was old, its leather cover softened by years of being carried in bags and left on nightstands. It held the beginning of their love story. The first date, the first kiss. Declan laughing in the rain outside a bakery because powdered sugar had landed on his black coat. The second journal was newer. That one held the death of the marriage. Dates, missed calls, forgotten dinners, doctor visits, Madeline's words, Declan's silence. Every small wound she had tried to ignore until the wounds became a map leading her out. At the bottom of the drawer was the audio recorder. Nora stared at it for a long moment. 3 weeks earlier, she had come home from an appointment at Boston Women's Cardiac Center with trembling legs and a heart monitor taped beneath her blouse. She had heard voices in Declan's study. His, Madeline's. Nora had not meant to listen. Then she heard her own name. She had stood in the hallway, one hand against the wall, and pressed record. Madeline's voice had been calm. Nora is becoming a liability. Declan's had been tired. She has been emotional lately. Madeline had moved closer to him. Nora remembered the soft click of her heels against the floor. Emotional women become dangerous wives. They ask for reassurance when men need clarity. They turn homes into sick rooms and call it love. Declan had said nothing. That silence was the first knife. Madeline had continued. You need to create distance. Let her understand that the Shaw name is not carried by women who need constant saving. Then Declan had spoken. All right. Nora had gripped the wall so hard her nails bent. Madeline had lowered her voice. Before children complicate things. The memory made Nora's throat close. Before children. As if her daughter were a complication instead of a miracle. Now Nora placed the recorder into the suitcase, then stopped. No, not the suitcase. Declan needed to hear it. Not because she wanted revenge. Revenge required energy she no longer had. He needed to know exactly how the rot had entered their house and how willingly he had breathed it in. She searched the bedroom until she found the small blue velvet box. Declan had given it to her during their honeymoon in Nantucket. They had wandered into an antique shop near the water, soaked from rain and laughing like children. Nora had admired the box because someone had painted tiny waves across the lid. Declan bought it without asking the price. Outside the shop, he had kissed her under a red awning and said, "Anything you love, I will protect." Nora held the box now and felt the memory pass through her like cold water. She sat at the desk. For a while, she did nothing but listen to the rain. Then she began to write. Declan, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Do not look for me, not because I think you will not find me, but because I know you can. That is what you do. You find people. You find weaknesses. You find problems and decide whether to buy them, bury them, or break them. I cannot become one more thing you handle. Her hand shook, but the words kept coming. I tried to tell you about the baby. Our daughter, 6 months along. You would have known if you had answered my calls. You would have known if you had come home before midnight. You would have known if you had looked at me and seen anything more than an obligation standing too close to your work. She stopped and pressed her hand against her chest until the pain eased. Then she wrote the part that hurt most. Tonight you stood in a room full of people who fear you and told them I was too weak to carry your legacy. I was 20 feet away carrying your child. A tear fell onto the page. Nora wiped it away quickly, angry that her body still wanted to grieve. I am not leaving because I stopped loving you. I am leaving because I started disappearing inside that love. She folded the letter before she could change a single word. Then she wrote another one. For her daughter. My sweet girl. If one day someone gives you this letter, it means I could not stay as long as I wanted. Please know this first. You were wanted. You were chosen. You were loved before you ever opened your eyes. Your father is not a simple man. I loved him before power swallowed the best parts of him. Maybe those parts are still there. Maybe not. I do not know anymore. But I know this. I left so you would not learn that love means becoming quiet while someone else becomes important. Nora rested the pen against her lips. She imagined a little girl with Declan's gray eyes and her own stubborn chin. A child running along a beach somewhere far from Boston. A child laughing without checking the room first. She finished the letter, folded it, and placed it inside the box. The third letter was the shortest. It was to herself. Nora Bennett, do not go back tonight. Not if he calls. Not if he apologizes. Not if he says your name the way he used to. You are not leaving to punish him. You are leaving to survive. She folded that one last. Then Nora removed her rings. The engagement ring resisted at first. Her fingers were swollen from pregnancy and stress. She twisted it gently, then harder until it slid free. The diamond caught the lamplight and threw it across the wall. 5 carats. A rooftop proposal. Declan on one knee with Boston beneath them and snow falling into his hair. I don't know how to be soft, he had said that night, but I know how to be yours. Nora closed her eyes. The wedding band came off more easily. That hurt worse. She placed both rings in the velvet box on top of the letters. Beside them, she tucked the sonogram photo, the bracelet engraved, Daddy, the recorder copies of the medical reports, and several torn journal pages. The box looked too small to hold a ruined marriage. At 4:10 in the morning, Nora called a car service from the burner phone. No Shaw driver, no familiar face, no one who owed Declan loyalty. She took the elevator down to the street carrying one suitcase and the blue box in a canvas bag. Outside, Boston was half asleep. Rain had thinned to mist. Delivery trucks groaned along the curb. Somewhere a siren rose and faded. The car dropped her near South Station. Inside, the fluorescent lights made everyone look tired and temporary. A young mother slept upright with a toddler against her chest. A man in a Red Sox cap argued softly into his phone. A woman in scrubs drank coffee with both hands wrapped around the cup. Nora stood in line and bought a ticket with cash. "Port Mercy, Maine," she said. The clerk did not look up. One way, Nora looked down at her belly. Yes, the bus left before dawn. Nora sat near the back with her suitcase at her feet and the canvas bag on her lap. As Boston slipped away behind rain-blurred glass, she waited for panic to come. It did not. Only grief. Grief sat beside her like a quiet passenger, heavy but no longer in command. She touched her bare ring finger. It felt strange. Light. Exposed. Her daughter moved. Nora leaned her head against the window. "We are going to find a place where nobody knows his name," she whispered. The sky slowly paled. Behind her, the city vanished. Declan woke 3 hours later to his phone vibrating against the nightstand. He reached for it without opening his eyes. Cole. His lawyer. Cole again. Madeline. Senator Pike. A message from Pike read, "Hell of a night. Call me." Declan sat up slowly. The bedroom was too quiet. Nora's side of the bed was untouched. That was the first wrong thing. Nora always slept curled toward the edge, as if even unconscious she was careful not to take up too much room. The sheets on her side were smooth. Her pillow had no dent. Her book was not on the nightstand. The glass of water she kept there every night was gone. Nora. His voice moved through the room and returned empty. Declan stood pulling on the shirt he had discarded near the chair. He checked the bathroom. Empty. Closet. Half full. Sitting room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. A cold feeling began under his ribs. Not fear yet. Declan Shaw did not name things fear until they had a gun in their hand. He returned to the bedroom and saw the blue velvet box on his pillow. For several seconds he simply stared. He knew that box. Nantucket. Rain. Nora laughing with wet hair. His own hands closing it around a silver necklace she had liked but said was too expensive. The memory came so clearly it made him angry. Why was it on his pillow? He opened it. The rings were the first thing he saw. The world narrowed. Declan picked up the wedding band. It lay in his palm, small and cold, heavier than any weapon he had ever held. Beneath it was the letter. He read the first line. "By the time you read this, I will be gone." His heart struck once hard. He read faster, then slower, then again from the beginning, because his mind refused the words even as his body understood them. Our daughter. 6 months along. 20 feet away carrying your child. Declan's grip tightened around the paper until it bent. "No," he said. No one answered. The sonogram slid from the folded pages and landed face up on the bed. A baby. His baby. A daughter. Declan stared at the image until the black and white blur began to swim. His phone rang. Madeline. He silenced it. He opened the medical reports. The language was clean, professional, merciless. High-risk pregnancy. Maternal cardiac strain. Elevated blood pressure. Immediate rest recommended. Delivery presents significant risk to maternal survival. A note from the cardiologist was circled in blue ink. Patient reports high levels of emotional distress and lack of spousal support. Strongly advised that husband be informed of severity of condition. Patient became tearful and stated husband is unavailable. Declan read the last word again. Unavailable. A simple word. a devastating one. He moved to the journals because the reports had facts, and facts were not enough to punish him. Nora's handwriting filled the pages. January 14th. I called Declan 4 times today. He did not call back. I told myself he was busy saving the empire. I wonder when I stopped being part of what he wanted to save. February 6th. Madeline said women like me break men like him. Declan heard her. He said nothing. March 21st. The baby kicked today. I stood outside his office for 20 minutes with the sonogram in my hand. I left when I heard him laughing with Cole. I do not know why I am afraid to interrupt my own husband. Declan put the journal down as if it had cut him. He remembered March 21st. A union dispute. Cole. Whiskey at noon. Nora standing in the hall when he came out later, smiling too brightly and saying she had forgotten what she needed. Forgotten. He had believed her because believing her had been convenient. His phone rang again. This time he answered without looking. What Madeline's voice came smooth and concerned. Declan, finally. Nora left the gala early last night. I thought perhaps she was being dramatic, but she is not answering her phone. Have you spoken to her? Declan looked at the recorder inside the box. No. Madeline sighed. I warned you she was becoming unstable. Public events overwhelm her. She wants attention at the worst possible moments. Declan picked up the recorder. His thumb hovered over play. Did you know? The line went quiet. Know what? His voice lowered. Choose carefully. Madeline's tone chilled by 1 degree. Declan. I am your mother. He pressed play. Madeline's own voice filled the bedroom. Nora is becoming a liability. Declan stood perfectly still while the recording continued. Emotional women become dangerous wives. Create distance. Before children complicate things. Then his own voice. All right. The room seemed to tilt. On the phone, Madeline said nothing. Declan stopped the recording. She is pregnant, he said. Silence. With my daughter. Still silence. And she might die. Madeline inhaled softly, not like a woman shocked, but like a woman recalculating. If that is true, then she hid it for a reason. Declan shut his eyes. Do not. She knew a child would secure her place. Do not say another word. Declan, listen to yourself. She left a dramatic little box on your pillow. She ran away while carrying a Shaw child. This is manipulation. Declan looked at the empty side of the bed. He saw Nora there in memories he had not earned the right to keep. Reading with her knees tucked under her. Waiting awake at 2 a.m, smiling at him like he was still a man instead of a machine built from his mother's grief. You are done, he said. Madeline's voice sharpened. Excuse me. Every board seat, every trust, every account you touch because people believe you speak for me. Done. You are emotional. Yes, Declan said. For once. Do not throw away your family because your wife staged a scene. My wife is gone because I made our home a place she had to escape. Madeline's breath turned hard. I made you what you are. Declan looked at Nora's ring in his palm. No, he said. You made sure I never became anything else. He ended the call. For a long moment he stood in the center of the bedroom with the city spread beneath him, the empire waiting the day already demanding decisions. Then he called Cole. Cole answered on the second ring. Boss Pike is making noise about last night. Also, your mother has been calling everyone. What happened? Declan's voice felt unfamiliar in his own mouth. Nora is gone. Cole did not speak. She is pregnant, Declan said. 6 months. High risk. I did not know. On the other end, Cole exhaled. Jesus, Declan. I am stepping back. From what? Everything. Cole's silence this time was different. Not shock. Alarm. You cannot step back from everything. I can. The waterfront deal is in motion. Pike is nervous. The Vale crew is watching the docks. Your mother will use any gap you leave, then fill it. Declan. Operational control goes to you. Call Gerald. Draft whatever documents he needs. I want Madeline removed from every position by tonight. Cole lowered his voice. Where are you going? To find my wife. If she left like that, maybe she does not want to be found. Declan closed his fingers around the sonogram. I know. Cole's tone softened. Then be careful how you find her. Declan almost laughed, but the sound never made it out. Careful. He should have been careful with her years ago. By noon, a private investigator named Evan Miles sat across from Declan in the penthouse study. Evan had once worked for the Bureau before choosing better pay and fewer rules. He had kind eyes which Declan distrusted and a tired face that suggested he had seen too many people confuse love with possession. Evan listened without interrupting. When Declan finished, Evan glanced at the blue velvet box on the desk. She planned this, Evan said. Declan's jaw tightened. Can you find her? Probably. Then do it. Evan leaned back. I need to say something before I accept your money. Declan stared at him. Evan did not blink. If a pregnant woman with a dangerous medical condition goes to this much trouble to vanish, she is not just running. She is protecting herself. Declan said nothing. If I locate her and you go to her, you may be violating the first clear boundary she has managed to set. She could die. Yes, Evan said. And your fear does not erase her right to choose who gets near her. Declan looked away. The words were ugly because they were true. Evan stood. I will trace cash points, bus terminals, traffic cameras, medical contacts, anything legal enough to keep us out of court. But Mr. Shaw, ask yourself one question before I call you with an address. Declan looked back at him. Are you trying to save her life, or are you trying to make yourself feel less guilty about the way you broke it? Declan did not answer. Evan nodded once as if the silence confirmed something and left. For 3 days, Declan barely slept. He signed documents removing Madeline from authority. He ignored her calls. He delegated operations to Cole. He read Nora's journals until the words blurred. He replayed the recording until his own voice became something he hated hearing. At night, he sat on the floor beside the bed because the bed belonged to the last morning he had still believed she would be there. On the 4th day, Evan called. Declan answered before the first ring finished. Tell me. She bought a one-way bus ticket under her maiden name. Declan stood. We're Port Mercy, Maine, small coastal town, population under 4,000. After that, she disappeared again. Declan grabbed his coat from the chair. Evan's voice sharpened. Listen to me. There is a clinic there, but not enough for her condition. The nearest major hospital is in Portland. If her medical records are accurate, she should not be alone. Declan was already moving toward the door. Send me everything, Mr. Shaw. Declan stopped. Evan was quiet for a moment. When you see her, do not enter like a man who owns the room. Declan looked back at the empty penthouse, at the blue box on the bed, at the life Nora had fled, because he had filled every room until there was no air left for her. I do not own anything, he said. Then he left Boston behind. By the time Declan crossed into Maine, Boston had become a blur of rain behind him and regret beside him. He drove himself because he could not bear the thought of sitting in the back seat while someone else carried him toward the woman he had failed. The rented black SUV cut through coastal roads lined with pine trees and wet stone walls. The farther north he went, the less the world looked like his. No glass towers, no private clubs, No men in tailored suits waiting for orders, just gas stations with hand-painted signs, white churches with dark steeples, fishing trucks with rust along the wheel wells, and gray sky hanging low over everything. Port Mercy appeared near dusk. It was smaller than he expected. The town curved around a narrow harbor where fishing boats rocked against wooden docks. Houses climbed the hill in uneven rows, most of them white or faded blue, their paint worn by salt and weather. A lighthouse stood beyond the rocks, its beam turning slowly through mist. Main Street had one stoplight, one diner, one pharmacy, one clinic, and a bookstore with green trim and warm light in the windows. Declan parked near the curb and sat with both hands on the wheel. Somewhere in this town, Nora was breathing. Somewhere his daughter existed beneath her heart. He had found the place, but not the right to enter it. Evan's warning returned to him as clearly as if the man sat in the passenger seat. Do not enter like a man who owns the room. Declan looked at his reflection in the windshield. Dark coat, unshaven jaw, eyes red from 3 nights without sleep. He still looked like a man who could make phone calls and change lives by noon. That would not help him here. He stepped out into the cold. The wind smelled like salt rain diesel and wood smoke. It cut through his coat and settled under his skin. Across the street, a bell rang as someone left the diner. The person looked at him once and then looked again. In Boston, people looked away when they recognized danger. In Port Mercy, they stared long enough to decide what kind of trouble had arrived. Declan crossed to the diner. The sign above the door read Maggie's Harbor Kitchen. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of coffee, fried fish, and cinnamon. A few booths were filled with fishermen in flannel shirts. An older couple sat near the window with bowls of chowder. A teenage girl wiped menus behind the counter. Every conversation softened when Declan walked in. Not stopped completely. Softened. That was worse. It meant they were practiced. A woman in her late 50s stood behind the counter, gray hair pulled into a knot, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She had the hard eyes of someone who had buried people, forgiven few, and been fooled by almost no one. She poured coffee into a mug and set it down before he asked. Passing through, her voice was flat. Declan sat on the stool, looking for someone. The room changed. A spoon touched a bowl and stayed there. The teenage girl stopped wiping menus. One of the fishermen turned just enough to hear better. The woman behind the counter placed both hands on the edge of the counter. People who come here looking for someone usually bring something with them. Declan looked at the coffee. Black. Bitter. Honest. I already brought it, he said. That earned him the smallest shift in her face. Name Declan Shaw. A fisherman near the back muttered something under his breath. The woman heard it. So did Declan. Her expression did not change. Maggie O'Rourke, she said. This is my place. Now tell me who you are looking for Declan Shaw. My wife. Maggie's jaw tightened. Declan saw it. Just a flicker. Enough. Nora Bennett Shaw, he said. The teenage girl behind the counter looked down too quickly. Maggie reached for the coffee pot and refilled a cup that did not need filling. Lot of people have wives. She is 6 months pregnant. She has a serious heart condition. She needs medical care. Maggie's eyes came back to him sharp enough to cut. And why is a woman like that here without you? There was no kindness in the question. No polite space where he could hide. Declan wrapped both hands around the mug but did not drink. Because I made staying with me feel more dangerous than leaving alone. The diner went quiet then. Fully quiet. Outside, rain ticked against the window. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pan hissed. Maggie studied him for a long time. That sounds rehearsed. It is not. Men with money usually know how to make shame sound expensive. Declan accepted that without blinking. I have money. I have shame. They are not the same thing. Her mouth pulled slightly, not a smile. You hurt her. Yes. Badly. Yes. You come here to drag her back. No. Then why come? Declan looked toward the window. The streetlights had come on, glowing soft through fog. A woman in a raincoat walked past, carrying bread in a paper bag. She did not hurry. She did not look afraid. He wondered if Nora had walked that same sidewalk, if she had stood in this diner and ordered tea, if someone here had spoken to her gently enough that she believed people could still be safe. I came because she may die, he said, and because our daughter may die with her. I came because if she needs a hospital, a doctor, a helicopter, blood money, anything, I can provide it. I came because I was not there when she needed me, and I need to be there now even if she never lets me near her again. Maggie leaned closer. You keep saying need. Declan looked at her. Does she need you, or do you need to be needed? The question struck cleanly. Declan did not answer right away. He had commanded rooms full of killers and liars. He had faced prosecutors who hated him and politicians who feared him. He had never felt as exposed as he did in front of a diner owner with flour on her sleeve. I do not know, he said at last. I am trying to learn the difference. Maggie stared at him, then turned toward the kitchen. Sam, call Dr. Ellis. The cook, a broad man with a white beard, appeared in the service window. You sure? No, Maggie said. That is why I am calling him. Declan did not speak. He drank the coffee because his hands needed something to do. 10 minutes passed. No one in the diner returned to normal. They pretended to eat. They pretended not to look. Their silence had weight, and for once it was not the kind Declan could lift. The door opened with a ring of the bell. A man in his early 60s stepped inside wearing a weathered coat over a blue shirt, medical bag in one hand. His hair was white at the temples. His face had the calm severity of someone who had delivered babies, signed death certificates, and learned not to waste words. Maggie nodded toward Declan. That is him. Dr. Warren Ellis approached the counter. You are Nora's husband. It was not a question. Declan stood. Yes. The doctor did not offer his hand. Sit. Declan sat. Dr. Ellis took the stool beside him. Maggie poured him coffee without asking. For several seconds, the doctor looked at Declan the way a surgeon might look at an infection before deciding whether the limb could be saved. She walked into my clinic 3 days ago, Dr. Ellis said. Pale as paper, blood pressure through the roof, heart rhythm, unstable, trying to convince me she was fine. Declan swallowed. She says that when she is not. I noticed. How bad is it, doctor? Ellis turned the mug slowly between his hands. Bad enough that if she were my daughter, I would have put her in an ambulance and sat on her if I had to. Declan's fingers tightened. Why did she refuse? The doctor looked at him then, and the anger in his eyes was quiet but old. She said, hospitals in Boston have your name on wings. She said your money gets through doors before she does. She said if she went anywhere connected to your world, she might wake up belonging to it again. Declan felt something inside him give way. He deserved the sentence. That did not make it easier to hear. She is wrong, he said softly. Maybe. Maybe not. Fear does not care if the danger has changed. It remembers what happened before. Declan nodded once. Is she safe here? Dr. Ellis gave a humorless laugh. No, she is less afraid here. That is not the same thing. Maggie crossed her arms. She has Ruth. The doctor looked at her. Ruth cannot restart a failing heart. Declan lifted his eyes. Tell me what she needs. Dr. Ellis studied him. You are used to saying that and having people hand you a bill. Yes, this is not that. I understand. No, the doctor said. You do not. Nora needs rest monitoring medication, a maternal fetal specialist, a cardiologist, emergency transport within minutes, and a delivery plan that does not rely on luck. What she does not need is stress. And you, Mr. Shaw, are stress in a wool coat. Maggie made a small sound that might have been agreement. Declan looked down at his untouched hands. Then do not tell her I am here. The doctor's eyebrows lifted. Declan forced the words out because they were the first decent thing he could offer. If seeing me could hurt her, do not tell her. Maggie's expression shifted just slightly. Dr. Ellis leaned back. You drove all this way to stay away. I drove all this way because I needed to know she was alive. She is. Declan closed his eyes for 1 second. The relief was sharp enough to hurt. And the baby alive, stronger than her mother right now. A breath left Declan before he could stop it. Maggie looked away as if she did not want to witness that much naked feeling from a man she had not decided whether to hate. Dr. Ellis took a sip of coffee. She is staying above Bell's Books. Ruth Bell owns the place. She took Nora in after finding her sitting outside the church in the rain with one suitcase and no color in her face. Declan opened his eyes. The image nearly broke him. Did she collapse? Almost. He stood too fast. Dr. Ellis grabbed his wrist. The doctor's grip was firm. I am not telling you this so you can charge over there. Declan looked at the hand on his arm, then at the doctor. In Boston, no one touched him like that. In Port Mercy, this man did not care. Dr. Ellis released him slowly. You want to help? You learn how to wait. Declan sat back down. Waiting had always been something he made other people do. Now it felt like punishment. Maggie looked between them. Ruth should decide if he gets near the stairs. The doctor nodded. She will skin him alive if he breathes wrong. Good, Maggie said. Declan almost asked what kind of woman Ruth Bell was, then decided he would find out soon enough. Bell's Books stood 2 blocks from the diner, tucked between a bait shop and a small post office with peeling blue paint. The windows glowed amber against the rain. Books were stacked in careful disorder behind the glass novels, children's stories, local histories, maps of the Maine coast. A bell hung above the door, and a hand-painted sign in the window read, Open when Ruth says so. Ruth Bell stood outside beneath the awning, locking the door. She was in her 60s, short, sturdy, with silver hair braided over one shoulder and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She wore a brown cardigan and boots splashed with mud. Nothing about her suggested softness. Everything about her suggested endurance. She turned before Declan spoke. So she said, Boston finally found us. Dr. Ellis stood beside Declan. Ruth, I know who he is. Declan inclined his head. Mrs. Bell, do not Mrs. Bell me. Men like you use manners like gloves, keeps fingerprints off the mess. Declan accepted that. I need to know if Nora is all right. Ruth's eyes narrowed. You need a lot for someone she ran from. I know. That your answer for everything, no. Good. It is already getting boring. Dr. Ellis sighed. Ruth. She ignored him. I have had that girl upstairs for 3 days, Ruth said. She apologizes for taking up space. She asks before drinking a second cup of tea. She flinches when the floorboards creak because some part of her thinks someone is coming to take her back. You did that. Declan's throat moved. Yes. Ruth looked disgusted by his honesty, or maybe by the fact that it did not fix anything. She does not need a scene. I will leave if you tell me to. You will leave if she tells you to. Declan nodded. Yes. Ruth searched his face. Whatever she saw there did not satisfy her, but it moved her enough to turn toward the stairs beside the shop. She is awake, Ruth said. She has not slept much. Do not stand too close. Do not raise your voice. Do not touch her unless she asks. If she looks faint, you step back and let Warren handle it." "I understand." Ruth gave him a cold look. "No, you are about to." The stairs were narrow and old, creaking under Declan's weight. Each step seemed louder than it should. At the top was a green door with chipped paint. From behind it came the faint sound of a kettle, the rustle of pages, and then nothing. Ruth knocked. "Nora, honey, it is Ruth." A pause. Nora's voice came through the door, tired and cautious. "Is Dr. Ellis with you?" "Yes." Another pause. "Is something wrong?" Ruth looked at Declan. "That depends." She opened the door. The apartment was small, warm, and crowded with books. A knitted blanket lay over the back of a faded sofa. A lamp glowed beside an armchair. Near the window, a mug of tea sat untouched on a table. The room smelled of paper lavender and rain. Nora stood beside the sofa. She wore black leggings and an oversized cream sweater. Her hair was loose around her face, shorter than Declan remembered, like she had cut away another piece of her old life. Without makeup, she looked younger and more fragile, but her eyes were not fragile. They were wounded. Then she saw him. All color drained from her face. "No." Declan stopped at the threshold. He did not move. Nora's hand flew to her stomach. "No, no, you cannot be here." Her knees buckled. Declan took one instinctive step forward, then stopped because Ruth was already moving. "Doctor." Ellis crossed the room with practiced speed and guided Nora onto the sofa. "Breathe," the doctor said. "Slow. In through your nose." Nora tried, but her eyes stayed locked on Declan. "How did you find me?" Declan stood near the door, hands open at his sides. "I hired someone." Her laugh came out broken. "Of course you did." "Nora." "No." Her voice sharpened. "You do not get to say my name like that. Not here." He absorbed it. "All right." She stared at him, breathing hard. "You hunted me down." "Yes. I left because I did not feel safe, and you proved the point by following me." Declan's face tightened, but he did not defend himself. "Yes." Ruth watched him closely. Nora's eyes filled with angry tears. "I was careful." "I know. I paid cash. I turned off my phone. I used my maiden name." "I know. Then why could you not let me have this?" The question was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was exhausted. Declan looked at her swollen belly, then forced his eyes back to her face because she was not just the mother of his child. She was Nora. She had been Nora before him, and would remain Nora if he lost every right to stand near her. "I needed to know you were alive," he said. "I was alive in your house for 3 years." The words landed like a slap. Declan nodded. "You were. You did not notice." "No." Her mouth trembled. "I begged you without begging. Do you know what that feels like? To stand in front of your husband and try to make your pain convenient enough for him to hear." Declan could not speak. Nora pressed one hand to her chest, breathing carefully. "I had a whole speech prepared," she said. "Every time. I practiced in bathrooms, in cars, and waiting rooms after appointments. I would tell myself, this time he will listen. This time I will not let him leave. Then you would look at your phone, or Madeline would walk in, or Cole would say something was urgent, and I would disappear again." "Nora," Dr. Ellis warned gently. "I am calm," she said, though she was not. Declan took a step back toward the door. That small movement made her blink. He saw her notice. "I will leave," he said. "If seeing me hurts you, I will leave Port Mercy tonight. But before I go, please let Dr. Ellis make a care plan. Let him call specialists. Let him arrange transport if you need it. Let me pay for it without you ever having to speak to me again." Nora's eyes hardened. "There it is." Declan went still. "Money," she said. "The cleanest chain you own." Ruth's mouth tightened. Declan looked down. "You are right to hear it that way." That answer quieted her more than an argument would have. He lifted his eyes. "I do not want to own your choices. I want you alive to make them." Nora's hand rested over her belly. Her fingers curled in the fabric of her sweater. "You do not get to call this love now. I know. You do not get to call her your daughter like that word makes you innocent." The sentence broke something across his face. "No," he said softly. "It does not. You humiliated me," she whispered. "In front of everyone. You called me weak while I was using every bit of strength I had just to stand there." Declan's eyes burned, but he did not look away. "I heard myself on the recording," he said. "I read the journals. I read the medical files. I know what I did. No, you know what happened. That is not the same as knowing what you did." The room fell silent. Dr. Ellis looked at Declan as if waiting to see whether power would rise in him. It did not. Declan nodded once. "You are right." Nora's anger faltered not because it was gone, but because it had expected resistance. "I do not forgive you," she said. "I know. I do not trust you. I know. I do not want to be your wife right now." His hand closed slowly at his side. "I know." The last answer cost him the most. Nora heard it. She looked away first. Dr. Ellis sat on the coffee table in front of her. "Nora, your blood pressure is too high. Your heart rhythm was unstable this morning. If you stay here without a proper plan, we are gambling with 2 lives." Her face crumpled. "I cannot go back to Boston." "No one is asking you to," he said. Her eyes flicked to Declan. Declan answered before fear could twist the silence. "I am not asking you to come back. I am not asking you for anything." Nora let out a bitter breath. "You are standing in my apartment." Ruth cleared her throat. "Technically mine." Nora glanced at her, and despite everything, a faint, broken smile touched her mouth. It vanished quickly. Declan held on to it anyway, not as hope, as proof that she was still alive under the pain. Dr. Ellis continued. "I can consult with specialists in Portland. I can bring in equipment. I can arrange emergency transport. But I need resources this clinic does not have." Nora closed her eyes. "I hate this. I know the doctor said. I hate needing him." Declan looked at the floor. Dr. Ellis's voice softened. "You do not need him as a husband tonight. You need access to help. There is a difference." Nora was quiet for a long time. Rain moved against the windows. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Somewhere downstairs, the bookstore sign creaked in the wind. When Nora opened her eyes, she looked straight at Declan. "You can stay in town." His breath stopped. She lifted a hand before he could speak. "Not here. Not near me. In town. Dr. Ellis can contact you if there is a medical emergency or if something is needed for the baby. You do not call me. You do not follow me. You do not send flowers, gifts, notes, apologies, or people. You do not speak to Ruth or Maggie as a way to get messages to me. I understand." "No, listen." Her voice shook but did not weaken. "If you push, I leave again. If you try to control this, I leave again. If Madeline comes near me, I leave again. If anyone from Boston shows up because of you, I leave again." Declan nodded. "I will keep them away." Her eyes flashed. "That sounds like control." He caught himself. Then he corrected it. "I will do what I can without making decisions for you." Nora stared at him. That was the first time he saw it. Not forgiveness, not trust, but the smallest recognition that he was trying to speak a language he had never bothered to learn. "Fine," she said. The word was cold. It was also mercy. Ruth moved toward the door. "That is enough for tonight." Declan nodded and stepped back into the hall. Before he left, he looked at Nora one last time. She sat on the sofa with one hand over their child, pale and furious and alive. He had once thought strength looked like men standing still while others trembled. He had been wrong. "I am sorry," he said. Nora turned her face toward the window. Noted. Ruth shut the door between them. Downstairs, the bookstore was dark except for one lamp near the register. Ruth led him outside without speaking. Dr. Ellis followed. The rain had softened to mist. Main Street was nearly empty. Declan stood beneath the awning and looked up at the lit apartment window. Dr. Ellis buttoned his coat. "There is a motel near the edge of town. Harbor Light. Tell Martha I sent you." Declan nodded. "Thank you. I did not do it for you. I know." The doctor stepped closer. "If you hurt her again, I will not care what kind of man you were in Boston." Declan met his eyes. "Neither will I." Dr. Ellis left. Ruth stayed beside him, arms folded. "She is not a prize you win back by suffering visibly." Declan kept his eyes on the window. "I know. You say that too much. I am finding out how much I did not know." Ruth considered him. "That is a start." Above them, Nora's silhouette moved behind the curtain. She paused near the window but did not look down. Declan did not wave. He did not call up. He did not step into the street where she could see him. He simply stood there until Ruth said, "Go to the motel, Mr. Shaw." Declan looked at the window one last time. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the light behind him, because for the first time in his life, loving Nora meant not following her into the room. The Harbor Light Motel sat at the edge of town where Main Street thinned into a road lined with pine trees and weather-beaten mailboxes. Declan checked in under his own name because he was tired of hiding behind names that money could buy. Martha, the woman at the front desk, looked at his driver's license, looked at his face, and said nothing for a long moment. Then she handed him a brass key attached to a plastic tag shaped like a lobster. "Room 7, she said. "Heater rattles if you turn it past 3. Declan took the key. "Thank you." Martha leaned one elbow on the counter. "Dr. Ellis says you are to be left alone unless you cause trouble." Declan nodded. "I will not cause trouble. Men rarely announce it before they do." She pushed the registration card toward him. He signed it. Room 7 smelled of dust salt and old carpet. The wallpaper had tiny blue flowers, faded almost gray. The bed sagged in the middle. The bathroom light buzzed. From the window he could see the parking lot, 2 pickup trucks, and beyond them the dark shape of the harbor. It was the smallest room he had slept in since childhood. It felt deserved. Declan sat on the edge of the bed and pulled Nora's wedding ring from his coat pocket. He had carried it all the way from Boston. He turned it between his fingers, watching the thin band catch the weak light from the lamp. Once that ring had been a promise. Now it was evidence. He placed it on the nightstand beside the sonogram photo and sat there until the room went dark around him. He did not sleep. Near dawn, his phone vibrated. Cole Archer. Declan let it ring twice before answering. "Talk." Cole exhaled hard. In the background, Declan heard voices, movement, the restless machinery of Boston still turning without him. "Pike is panicking. The waterfront vote is under review. Frankie Vale's people are asking questions at the docks. Your mother is calling old family friends and telling them you are unwell." Declan stared at the pale line of morning appearing behind the motel curtains. "Handle it. I am handling it. That is not the point. It is the only point." Cole went quiet, then said, "Did you find her?" Declan closed his eyes. "Yes. And she is alive. The baby is alive. She hates me." Cole did not answer right away. Can you blame her? No. Is she safe? Declan thought of Nora on Ruth Bell's sofa, pale and shaking one hand over their daughter, as if her own body were the last wall she had left. No, he said. But she is safer than she was with me. Cole's voice softened. Declan, do not. I was there that night, at the gala. I should have said something. Declan opened his eyes. Yes, the honesty hung between them. Cole accepted it. I am sorry. So am I. And neither of our apologies changes the fact that she heard me. Cole sighed. What do you need from me? Keep Boston away from her. Keep Madeline away. Keep Vale from learning where I am. That last one will not stay buried forever. Then bury it deeper. Cole gave a humorless laugh. You sound like yourself. Declan looked at Nora's ring. No, he said. That is the problem. I am trying not to. He ended the call before Cole could answer. At 8, Declan walked into town. The sky was low and gray. Fishing boats were already coming back into the harbor, their decks wet their crews, silent and cold. Men glanced at him from under caps and hoods. No one greeted him. At Maggie's harbor kitchen he ordered coffee and eggs. Maggie set both in front of him. You sleep no. Eat anyway. He picked up the fork. She watched him take the first bite, then moved down the counter to refill another cup. No one in Port Mercy forgave him because he looked tired. He respected that. After breakfast, Dr. Ellis found him outside the clinic. The building had once been a white house with green shutters. A hand-painted sign near the porch read, Port Mercy Family Clinic. The steps sagged on one side. The railing was loose. Declan noticed the railing before he noticed the doctor's expression. Dr. Ellis held a folder. I spoke with Portland. Declan straightened. And they agree with me. Nora should be under hospital observation. She will not go. No, she will not. The doctor opened the folder and handed him a list. Then we bring as much care here as we can. Portable cardiac monitor, blood pressure system, fetal monitor, emergency medication, oxygen, a specialist who can consult twice a week by video, a transport plan with a helicopter if roads are blocked. Declan scanned the list. I can have it here by tomorrow. Dr. Ellis narrowed his eyes. This is not a challenge. It is a fact. She cannot feel bought. She will not know it came from me. She will know. Declan looked up. Then tell her this. I am not paying because I think it earns me a chair beside her. I am paying because I should have protected her life long before I cared whether she forgave mine. Dr. Ellis studied him. That almost sounds like a decent man. Do not be generous. I was not. The doctor took the folder back. I will tell her there are resources available. She gets to approve every piece of care. Nothing enters that apartment without her consent. Good. Dr. Ellis nodded toward the clinic railing. You handy? Declan looked at the loose wood. No. Learn. So Declan learned. He spent the morning on the clinic steps with a borrowed toolbox, scraping his knuckles on rusted screws while Dr. Ellis saw patients inside. Twice older women walked past and slowed down just long enough to see Declan Shaw kneeling in wet leaves trying to make a railing steady. By noon, Maggie appeared with a sandwich wrapped in paper. You look ridiculous, she said. Declan tightened a bolt. I feel ridiculous. Good. She set the sandwich on the porch. Nora asked about the equipment. Declan went still. Maggie noticed but did not soften. She asked if you were using money to corner her. What did you tell her? I told her rich men do not need help looking bad, so I would wait and see. Declan almost smiled. Thank you. That was not a kindness. I know. Maggie looked toward the harbor. She is scared. Declan's hand tightened around the wrench. I know. No, you do not. You know guilt. You know regret. Fear is different. Fear is waking up in a strange room wondering if your own body will betray your child before breakfast. Declan said nothing. Maggie looked back at him. You want to help her? Stop making her carry your feelings, too. Then she walked away. He sat on the clinic steps long after she left the sandwich untouched beside him, because every person in Port Mercy seemed to know one piece of love he had never learned. For the next 2 weeks, Declan stayed exactly where Nora had placed him. In town. Not at her door. Not inside her life. He did not call. He did not send flowers. He did not stand under her window like some tragic man in a song. He moved through Port Mercy quietly doing what needed doing when someone allowed it. He fixed the bookstore's back step after Ruth told him it was a lawsuit waiting to happen. He carried boxes of donated books from a church basement to the shop. He stacked firewood behind Maggie's diner. He sat with Dr. Ellis while the doctor walked him through Nora's emergency plan, every medication, every warning sign, every terrible possibility. At night, he returned to room 7 and read Nora's journals again, not to punish himself, though it did that too, but to learn the shape of the pain he had missed. Some evenings from across the street, he saw Nora through the bookstore window. Only glimpses. Her profile near the shelves. Her hand on her belly. Ruth guiding her gently to a chair. Once Nora laughed at something a child said in the shop, and Declan had to turn away because the sound felt like sunlight on a locked room. He did not go in. He had been told not to. That mattered now. Then Madeline came to Port Mercy. Declan saw the black town car before he saw her. It rolled down Main Street like a stain too polished for the rain, too arrogant for the narrow road. It stopped in front of the clinic while Declan stood outside speaking with Dr. Ellis. Madeline stepped out in a cream wool coat, diamond earrings bright against the gray afternoon. Port Mercy seemed to reject her on sight. A fisherman across the street spat into the gutter. Maggie appeared in the diner window. Ruth came out of the bookstore and stood under the awning, arms crossed. Madeline looked at none of them. Her eyes found Declan. "You have embarrassed yourself long enough," she said. Declan did not move. "Go back to Boston." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Your absence is being read as weakness. Pike is unstable. Vale is circling the docks. Cole cannot hold everything without you." "Then everything was weaker than I thought." Madeline's mouth tightened. "You would throw away 3 generations of work for a woman who ran—" Declan's face went cold. She did not run from love. She ran from harm. Madeline laughed softly. "She has made you sentimental." "No," he said. "She made me look." Madeline glanced toward the bookstore. "She is carrying a Shaw child." Declan took 1 step toward her. The air changed. For a second, the old Declan stood there, the man Boston feared. Even Dr. Ellis felt it and went still. Declan stopped himself. He let the silence pass through him instead of turning it into a weapon. "She is carrying her child," he said. "Our child. Not yours. Not Boston's. Not the family's." Madeline's eyes sharpened. "You sound like a man begging to be ruined. I was ruined before I came here. I just did not know it." Her smile turned cruel. "When this little fantasy ends, do not expect the men you abandoned to kneel again." Declan looked at her for a long moment. "I do not want them to kneel." That answer unsettled her more than anger would have. Ruth crossed the street before Madeline could speak again. "You lost sweetheart?" Madeline looked down at her. "Excuse me?" Ruth smiled without warmth. "Because unless you are here to buy a book or apologize to the pregnant woman you helped break, you are blocking my sidewalk." Madeline stared at her as if Ruth were furniture that had started speaking. Declan almost warned Ruth. Then he realized Ruth did not need warning. Madeline looked back at him. "You would let these people speak to me this way?" Declan answered calmly. "You came to their town." For the first time in Declan's life, his mother looked at him and found no handle. No guilt, no duty, no old grief she could turn. only a man standing between her and the life she had tried to own. Madeline returned to her car. Before she got inside, she said, "You will regret choosing weakness." Declan looked toward the bookstore window. Nora stood behind the glass, pale, one hand on the frame. She had seen everything. Declan did not wave. He only stepped back, giving her the distance she had asked for. That evening, Ruth came to the motel. Declan opened the door and found her standing with a paper bag in one hand. "She wants to speak with you." His heart struck hard. "When? Now. And do not look so hopeful. She is furious." "I know." Ruth handed him the bag. "What is this, a clean shirt? Yours looks like you fought a railing and lost." He changed and followed her through cold mist to the bookstore. Nora sat in the apartment by the window wrapped in a blue blanket. Her face was tired, but her eyes were clear. Declan stopped near the door. "You can sit," she said. He sat in the chair farthest from her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nora said Madeline came. "Yes." She looked at me through the window like my daughter was a bank account she meant to recover. Declan's jaw tightened. "She will not come near you again." Nora's eyes flashed. "You do not get to make promises you cannot keep." He took the correction. "I will do everything I can to make sure she does not." That softened nothing, but it angered her less. She looked down at her hands. "Boston followed you here." "Yes." "Your world followed you here." "Yes." "I do not want my daughter born into that world." Declan leaned forward, then stopped himself and sat back. "Neither do I." Nora studied him carefully. "You expect me to believe you can leave it no?" That surprised her. "I expect you to doubt me until my choices become more consistent than my words." Her throat moved. The baby shifted beneath the blanket. Nora winced. Declan's hands tightened on his knees, but he did not rise. She noticed that too. "You can ask," she said quietly. He almost did not understand. Then his eyes moved to her belly. "Is she hurting you?" Nora looked away. "Everything hurts lately." The honesty was small and devastating. Declan's voice lowered. "I am sorry. I know. I do not say it because I think it helps. Then why say it? Because silence helped break us." Nora looked at him then. For the first time, the anger in her face was not alone. Something else stood beside it. Grief, maybe. Or memory. "Did you ever love me?" she asked. Declan felt the question enter him slowly like a blade sliding between ribs. "Yes." Her eyes filled. "Then how did you become so cruel?" He did not answer quickly. He owed her more than the first thing pain produced. "I loved you like a man who thought love could wait in another room while he became important. I thought if I built enough power around us it would count as protection. I did not understand I was building walls you could not breathe behind." Nora wiped one tear before it fell. "Your mother said I made you weak. My mother was wrong. She said I would never survive your life." Declan's voice broke slightly. "She was right about one thing. You should never have had to survive it." Nora looked down. Rain touched the window. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I do not know what to do with this version of you. Neither do I." A faint breath left her. Not a laugh. Almost. Then her hand went to her stomach. Her face tightened. Declan sat forward. "Nora." She shook her head. "It is nothing." Another pain crossed her face. This one took the color with it. Declan stood. "I am calling Dr. Ellis. I said it is nothing." He stopped with the phone in his hand. The old him would have made the call anyway. The new man he was trying to become looked at her and asked, "Do you want me to call him?" Nora? Hated the question. He saw it. Hated needing the answer. Hated that her body had made pride expensive. Then she nodded. Yes. Dr. Ellis arrived within minutes. By then, Nora was breathing through another wave of pain. The doctor checked her blood pressure, listened to her heart, then went very still in the way doctors do when they do not want fear to spread before facts are clear. "We need to move her to Portland," he said. Nora's eyes widened. "No." "Nora. No hospital. This is not optional anymore." Outside, thunder rolled over the harbor. Ruth pulled back the curtain. "The storm is early." Rain slammed the windows before anyone could answer. The nor'easter came down hard, fast, and vicious. Wind bent the street signs. Lights flickered across town. Somewhere near the harbor, a transformer blew with a blue flash. Dr. Ellis called for an ambulance. The road south was already flooding. Nora cried out, one hand gripping the arm of the sofa. Declan knelt beside her, still not touching. "I am here." She turned her head toward him, sweat bright on her forehead. "I told you not to come unless I needed you." His throat tightened. "Yes." Her fingers reached blindly. He gave her his hand. She held it with desperate strength. "I hate that I need you." "That is okay," he whispered. The words had barely left him when the power went out. The apartment fell into darkness. Then Ruth's lantern flared on. Dr. Ellis looked at Declan. "Helicopter." Declan was already calling. The first pilot said visibility was nearly impossible. Declan stood near the window, looking out at rain tearing sideways through the dark. "There is a pregnant woman in cardiac distress and a premature baby running out of time," he said. The pilot said something about wind shear and landing zones. Declan listened, not commanded. Listened. "What do you need?" The answer came. "Lights. A clear field. Wind markers. Medical team ready." Declan hung up and called Maggie. Within 10 minutes, Port Mercy moved. Trucks drove toward the school field with headlights on high. Fishermen brought flares. Maggie brought blankets and coffee. Ruth packed Nora's medical folder with hands that shook only when no one looked. Dr. Ellis prepared medication while counting seconds under his breath. Nora's contractions came closer. Her heart monitor screamed once, then steadied. Declan stayed beside her because she had not let go of his hand. "Nora, Dr. Ellis said we have to get you downstairs." She looked at Declan, and all the anger, all the history, all the ruin between them shrank beneath a fear older than pride. "If I do not make it," she whispered. Declan shook his head. "Do not. Listen to me." He forced himself still. Her grip tightened. "Do not let her grow up thinking power is love." His eyes burned. "I will not. Do not let Madeline touch her. Never. And do not tell her I left because I did not love you." Declan bent his head over her hand. "What do I tell her?" Nora's eyes filled, but her voice did not break. "Tell her I loved you enough to leave before I disappeared." The helicopter lights appeared through the storm like a miracle no one trusted yet. They carried Nora down the stairs, wrapped in blankets, Ruth on one side, Dr. Ellis on the other, Declan walking backward in front of her, as if his body could bargain with the wind. Outside, the whole town seemed to be made of headlights. Rain soaked everyone. No one moved away. The helicopter landed in the school field blades, beating the storm into a white frenzy. Declan climbed in beside Nora only after she looked at him and gave the smallest nod. At the hospital in Portland, everything became light motion voices' hands. Nora was taken through double doors. Declan tried to follow. A nurse stopped him. "We need to take her now." Nora looked back once from the moving bed. For 1 second, she was his wife again. Not forgiven, not returned, but connected by the life they had made and the terror they shared. Then the doors closed. Hours passed in a waiting room that smelled of coffee and antiseptic. Cole called. Declan ignored it. Madeline called. He blocked the number. A doctor finally came through the doors wearing blue scrubs and tired eyes. "The baby is alive," she said. Declan stood but could not speak. "She is premature, but she is breathing with support. She is strong." His knees nearly failed. And Nora. The doctor's face changed. "Your wife's heart is under severe strain. She needs emergency surgery. The next few hours are critical." Declan nodded because if he did anything else he would fall apart in front of strangers. A nurse led him to the NICU window first. Behind the glass, his daughter lay inside an incubator, impossibly small fists curled near her face wires taped to her tiny chest. She opened her mouth in a silent cry. Declan placed one hand against the glass. "Hi," he whispered. His voice broke completely. "Hi, little Storm." They let him see Nora before surgery. She was pale, unconscious, surrounded by machines. Declan stood beside the bed, afraid to touch her and afraid not to. Finally, he placed the tiny bracelet engraved Daddy beside her hand. "I do not deserve to ask you for anything," he said. "So I am not asking you to come back for me." He leaned close enough for his breath to touch her fingers. "Come back for yourself. Come back for the little girl who already fights like you. Come back because your life is yours, Nora. And it should not end, because I learned too late how much it mattered." The surgical team arrived. Declan stepped back. This time, when they took her away, he did not try to follow. He stood in the hallway with rainwater still drying on his clothes, his daughter alive behind glass, his wife behind doors, and all the power he had ever held finally useless in his hands. Nora woke to the sound of machines breathing around her. For a few seconds, she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her was white, too white. The air smelled like antiseptic plastic and something cold she could not name. A tube scratched at her throat when she swallowed. Her chest felt heavy, stitched together from the inside. Every part of her body seemed far away, as if she had been taken apart and placed back wrong. Then she remembered the storm, the bookstore, Declan's hand in hers, the helicopter lights breaking through rain, her daughter. Panic moved through her faster than pain. Nora tried to sit up. A monitor shrieked. A nurse appeared beside her. "Easy, Mrs. Shaw. Easy. You are safe." Nora's lips moved, but no sound came out. The nurse leaned closer. "Your baby is alive." The words stopped the panic before anything else could. Nora closed her eyes and tears slipped down into her hair. "She is premature, but she is strong," the nurse said gently. "She is in the NICU. The doctors are watching her closely." Nora tried again. This time her voice came out as a broken whisper. "Declan." The nurse glanced toward the corner of the room. Nora followed her eyes. Declan sat in a chair against the far wall, not beside the bed, not close enough to touch her, across the room as if distance were something he had been prescribed. He was asleep with his elbows on his knees, head bowed, still wearing the wrinkled clothes from the storm. There was dried blood on one sleeve. His beard had grown in ruff along his jaw. His hands hung open between his knees, empty and helpless. He looked nothing like the King of Boston. He looked like a man who had been waiting outside judgment and did not expect mercy. The nurse touched his shoulder. "Mr. Shaw." Declan woke instantly. His eyes found Nora. For one breath, he did not move. He only stared at her as if the sight of her awake might disappear if he reached for it too quickly. Then he stood, slowly, carefully. Nora. Her name sounded raw in his mouth. She swallowed. The baby. He came one step closer, then stopped at the foot of the bed. She is alive. She is tiny, angry, loud when she wants to be. A weak sound left Nora. It was almost a laugh, almost a sob. Declan's face changed at the sound. Pain moved through him, but he did not try to claim the moment. "What did they call her?" Nora whispered. "They asked me." His voice trembled. "I told them I needed to wait for you." Nora looked at him. For a long time they only listened to the machines. Then she said, "Hope." Declan closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "Hope," he repeated. "Hope Bennett Shaw." He nodded immediately. Bennett first. Nora watched him searching for a fence pride possession. She found none, only understanding. "She is not an heir," Nora said. "No, she is not a legacy. No, she is a child." Declan's voice broke softly. "Yes." Nora turned her face toward the window. It was dark outside. Rain still moved across the glass, but gently now, as if the storm had exhausted itself. "I want to see her." The doctors said no at first. Nora's body was too fragile. Her heart was still recovering. She needed rest observation medication, another scan in the morning. They said it kindly, with professional voices and careful eyes. Nora listened. Then she said, "I want to see my daughter." No one argued after that. An hour later, they wheeled her through the hospital corridors, wrapped in blankets, with Declan walking beside the chair but not touching it. Nurses moved past them. Lights hummed above. Somewhere a baby cried, thin and furious, and Nora's heart responded before her mind could. The NICU was warm and dim, full of soft beeping and low voices. Hope lay inside an incubator near the window. She was smaller than Nora had imagined possible. Her skin was red and delicate. A tiny cap covered her head. Wires crossed her chest. Her fingers curled and uncurled as if she were already arguing with the world. Nora lifted a shaking hand to the glass. "Oh, my sweet girl." Declan stood behind her, far enough that she did not feel trapped, close enough that she knew he was there. Hope's little mouth opened, and though no sound came through the glass, her whole face tightened with outrage. Nora cried and smiled at once. "She is mad." Declan's voice was soft. "She gets that from you." Nora looked over her shoulder. He lowered his eyes immediately, as if he had stepped too close to an old kind of intimacy. But Nora did not turn away. For once, the silence between them did not feel like punishment. It felt like two people standing beside something too fragile for loud words. In the days that followed, Nora learned pain in layers. There was the pain in her chest, deep and hot, where the surgeons had fought to keep her alive. There was the pain of standing for the first time, of breathing too deeply, of coughing, and feeling as if her body might split. There was the pain of leaving Hope in the NICU every night, even though she was only a hallway away. There was the pain of remembering that survival did not erase what had made survival necessary. Declan stayed nearby, not in her room unless invited, not hovering over doctors, not making demands. He slept in waiting room chairs and showered in a hospital bathroom. He learned the nurses' names. He brought coffee for Dr. Ellis, who had driven down from Port Mercy after the storm cleared. He signed forms when Nora asked him to. He stood outside during private consultations. When doctors discussed Hope's care, he looked to Nora before answering any question. The first time he did it, Nora noticed. A neonatologist asked, "Do you both consent to the feeding plan?" Declan turned to Nora. Her throat tightened. A simple thing. A devastating thing. He did not speak over her. He did not decide for her. He waited. "Yes," Nora said. Only then did Declan nod. "Yes." On the 5th day, Madeline Shaw tried to enter the NICU. Nora was in her hospital bed when Ruth came in carrying a paper cup of tea and a face like thunder. "She is downstairs." Nora's fingers tightened around the blanket. Declan stood from the chair near the window. Ruth looked at him. "I told security to keep her in the lobby. I would have handled it myself, but apparently hospitals frown on old women threatening people near elevators." Declan's expression turned quiet. The old quiet. Nora felt her body tense before she could stop it. Declan saw. The quiet changed. He turned toward her, not the door. "Do you want me to handle it through security and legal channels?" Only Nora stared at him. He had asked, not assumed, not charged out like a weapon. Asked. "Yes," she said. He nodded. "I will." He did not look angry when he left. That frightened Nora less. From the lobby, Madeline called him 6 times. He did not answer. He called Gerald Moss, his attorney, and within 20 minutes, hospital security had a formal restriction on file. Madeline Shaw was not permitted near Nora or Hope without Nora's written consent. When Declan returned, Nora was awake. "She is gone," he said. Nora watched his face. "You did not see her, no. Why? Because seeing her would have been for me. Keeping her away from you was for you." Nora looked down at her hands. The answer settled somewhere she did not want him to reach yet. "Thank you," she said. Declan's breath caught. He nodded once, then looked away as if those 2 words were more than he deserved. 2 weeks later, Hope was stable enough for Nora to hold her. A nurse placed the tiny baby against Nora's chest skin to skin with tubes and wires carefully arranged. Hope's cheek rested near Nora's heartbeat. Her small body relaxed almost immediately as if she recognized the sound that had carried her through every terrible day. Nora cried silently. Declan stood near the wall. The nurse glanced at him. "Dad, do you want to come closer?" Declan looked at Nora first. Nora looked down at Hope. After a moment, she said, "You can stand beside the bed." He moved like a man approaching a holy place. Hope opened one eye. Declan bent slightly, his hands clasped behind his back because he did not trust them. "Hi, little storm," he whispered. Hope made a small sound. Nora looked at him. "Little storm." His eyes stayed on the baby. She arrived in one. Nora should have hated the tenderness in his voice. Instead, it made her tired, not weak. Tired of fighting every feeling that did not fit the shape of her anger. "You can touch her foot," she said. Declan looked at her sharply. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He reached out with one finger and touched Hope's tiny foot. The baby kicked him. A broken laugh left his chest. Nora looked away before he could see what the sound did to her. A month passed before Hope came home to Port Mercy. Home was not Boston. Nora made that clear before discharge papers were even signed. She would return to the apartment above Belle's books until she was strong enough for something else. Hope would stay with her. Declan could rent a place nearby. Visits would happen when Nora agreed. Medical decisions would be shared. Madeline would have no access. The Shaw name would open no doors Nora had closed. Declan agreed to all of it. Too quickly, she thought. Then he said, "Write it down. Have a lawyer make it formal." Nora stared at him. "You want legal limits on yourself?" "Yes." "Why?" "So you do not have to trust my mood to feel safe." That answer followed her all the way back to Port Mercy. The town welcomed Nora and Hope with casseroles, knitted hats, diapers, soup flowers, and the kind of careful affection that did not ask too many questions. Maggie cried when she saw the baby, then denied it while wiping her eyes with her apron. Dr. Ellis checked Nora's pulse 3 times and pretended not to be emotional. Ruth stood in the doorway of the apartment and watched Nora carry Hope inside. There, Ruth said softly, "That sounds better in this place. What does a baby breathing?" Declan rented a small cottage 3 streets away from the bookstore. White paint blue shutters, a porch that leaned slightly to the left. He could have bought the biggest house on the hill. He did not. The cottage had 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a view of the harbor if he stood at the right angle near the sink. He learned ordinary life badly at first. He burned toast. He shrank a sweater. He bought the wrong diapers twice. He stared at the self-checkout machine in the pharmacy until a teenager took pity on him. He showed up one morning with 6 kinds of formula because he did not know which one Hope needed, and Nora stared at the bags until he said, "I panicked." She laughed. It surprised both of them. The laugh did not fix anything, but it stayed in the room after it ended. For the first months, their conversations were about Hope, feeding times, medication, doctor visits, sleep, Nora's heart, bills, boundaries. Declan never asked where he stood with her. He never asked if she missed him. He never touched her without permission. When Hope cried during his visits, he looked to Nora before picking her up. One night when Hope was 3 months old, Nora had not slept in nearly 2 days. Her body was still weak. Her chest hurt when she carried the baby too long. Hope had colic and fury and lungs strong enough to wake half the harbor. Declan stood in the apartment doorway, having brought groceries Ruth requested. Hope screamed in Nora's arms. Nora bounced her gently face pale with exhaustion. "Nothing is working," Nora whispered. Declan set the grocery bag down. "Can I try?" Nora looked at him. The baby screamed louder. Nora's eyes filled with frustration and shame. "I should be able to calm my own child." Declan's voice stayed gentle. "You have been calming her all night." That did it. Not the offer, not his presence. The fact that he had seen her effort instead of her failure. Nora handed him the baby. Declan took Hope carefully, one hand supporting her head, the other beneath her small body. At first he looked terrified. Then he began to walk slowly around the room, murmuring something Nora could not hear. Hope's crying softened, then stopped. Nora sat down hard on the sofa and covered her face. Declan stopped walking. "Nora, I am fine." He did not believe her. He also did not push. He kept walking with Hope against his chest. After a while, Nora lowered her hands. Declan stood by the window, the baby asleep against him, his face open in the lamplight. Not proud, not triumphant, wondering, as if every breath Hope took trusted him more than he trusted himself. Nora watched him and felt grief move inside her quieter than before. Grief for the man he had been. Grief for the man he might have been sooner. Grief for herself who had needed to leave before he learned how to stay. Spring warmed into summer. Declan went back to Boston only once. Nora did not ask what he did there. Cole told her weeks later when he came to Port Mercy with a stuffed whale for Hope and guilt heavy in his shoulders. Declan had signed away power-cut legal ties, surrendered dirty contracts, and burned enough bridges that the old Shaw organization would never again stand the way it had. Some men hated him. Some feared what he knew. Some waited for weakness. Nora listened while Hope slept in her lap. "And you?" she asked Cole. Cole looked toward the harbor. "I am cleaning what can be cleaned and burying what cannot without hurting anyone who does not deserve it." "That sounds impossible." "It is." "Why help him?" Cole's jaw tightened. "Because I watched him become his mother's son, and I said nothing. I am trying not to make silence a habit." Nora looked down at Hope. Boston did not vanish from their lives in one grand gesture. It faded unevenly like a bruise. There were calls Declan took outside in the rain. Threats he did not repeat. lawyers who came and went. One night, a black car sat too long near the harbor, and by morning it was gone. Declan never told Nora what happened. Instead, he gave her the facts she needed. There may be danger. From who? Old business. Are you handling it? He paused, then said, I am informing the people who can help keep you safe, and I am asking what you want done. Nora stared at him for a long time. Good, she said. It was not forgiveness, but it was trust in one narrow place. That was how they rebuilt. One narrow place at a time. The first real apology came in October. Hope was almost 8 months old. Nora was stronger, though some days her chest still ached and her energy vanished without warning. She had started writing again, first in journals, then in small stories about a girl who lived near the sea and spoke to storms. That evening, Declan came by after dinner to fix a loose shelf Ruth had been complaining about for a week. Hope was asleep in her crib. Ruth was downstairs closing the shop. Nora stepped onto the small back porch for air. Declan followed only after she said, You can come out. They stood side by side, not touching, watching fog roll in from the water. Declan spoke first. I have said I am sorry so many times that the words probably sound empty now. Nora kept her eyes on the fog. Sometimes. He nodded. I think I was saying them wrong. She looked at him then. His hands rested on the porch railing, scarred from months of ordinary work. He was still learning. I am sorry. I made you small so my world could feel big, he said. I am sorry I treated your patience like permission. I am sorry I let my mother teach me that tenderness was weakness. I am sorry I made you practice speeches in hallways because your husband had become harder to reach than men who feared him. Nora's lips parted, but she said nothing. Declan's voice roughened. I am sorry that leaving me was the first safe choice you had made in years. That one entered her differently, deeply, because he had finally named the truth without trying to soften it. Nora looked down at her bare left hand. I did not want leaving to be the answer. I know. I wanted you to turn around. Declan closed his eyes. At the gala. At the gala. In the office. In the hallway. In our bedroom. For months, Declan, I kept waiting for you to turn around. When he opened his eyes, they were wet. I am sorry I made you wait until waiting became dangerous. Nora breathed in slowly. The sea air hurt her chest, but she welcomed it. I do not know if I can be your wife again. Declan nodded. I know. I am not saying never. His face changed, but he held himself still, as if hope were something fragile he had no right to grab. I hear you, he said. Nora looked at him. The old Declan would have pushed, asked what that meant, reached for certainty, tried to turn a crack into an open door. This man only stood beside her in the fog and let the words be what they were. Years passed that way. Not quickly, not perfectly. Declan missed things. Nora pulled away. Some nights old fear returned and made her cold. Some days guilt made him quiet in a way that frightened her, and she had to remind him that silence was not the same as patience. They argued about Doctor's Money Bedtime Boston, whether Hope should learn the Shaw history, whether love could survive being rebuilt from its own wreckage. But they stayed honest. That was new. Hope grew into a bright, wild child with Nora's stubborn chin and Declan's storm-gray eyes. She loved tide pools, pancakes, bookstores, and climbing onto Declan's shoulders when he knelt to tie her shoes. She called Maggie Auntie Mags, Dr. Ellis Doc, and Ruth Queen Ruth, because Ruth declared herself ruler of the bookstore, and no one dared disagree. Declan became part of Port Mercy slowly, not because the town forgot who he had been, because they watched what he did when no one applauded. He fixed boats badly until fishermen taught him properly. He volunteered at the winter coat drive. He let Hope paint his fingernails blue and walked into the diner with them still shining. He never used his old name to get a better table, a faster answer, or a softer consequence. On Hope's 5th birthday, the town gathered near the lighthouse. The sky was clear after a week of rain. Balloons bobbed against the fence. Children ran through the grass with paper crowns and sticky hands. Maggie carried a cake shaped like a whale. Ruth complained that the frosting was too blue while eating the corner piece. Dr. Ellis sat in a folding chair pretending not to nap. Hope ran ahead with a kite, laughing as the wind pulled it high above the rocks. Nora stood beside Declan near the path. She wore a blue dress and a light sweater. Her hair moved in the sea breeze. Her heart was stronger now, though the scar remained beneath her clothes, a private line between the woman who had almost died and the woman who chose to live after. Declan watched Hope with the soft awe that still appeared on his face when he thought no one noticed. Nora noticed everything now. Around his neck, beneath the collar of his shirt, she saw the thin chain he had worn for years. On it hung his wedding ring. He had never put it back on his hand, never asked for hers, never used it as a question. Nora touched the pocket of her sweater. Her own ring was inside. She had carried it all day, though she had not known why until this moment. Declan. He turned. She nodded toward the chain. You still wear it? His hand rose to the ring. Yes. Why? He looked toward the water, then back at her. To remember that love is not kept by claiming it. It is kept by caring for it after someone trusts you enough to place it in your hands. Nora's throat tightened. Hope shouted from the grass. Daddy, look. Declan turned instantly and waved as the kite dipped and rose. Nora watched him. There had been a time when the whole city could call and he would answer before she finished a sentence. Now their daughter called once and the world waited. Nora reached into her pocket and pulled out her wedding ring. Declan saw it. Everything in him went still. She held it in her palm. I am not going back to who we were, she said. His voice was low. I do not want who we were. I will not live in Boston. I know. I will not let power sit at our table and call itself protection. I know. I need ordinary Declan. Honest, sometimes boring, sometimes hard. I need a life where love does not require me to disappear. He stepped closer, then stopped, leaving the choice of distance to her. I want that life, he said. Nora looked at the ring, then at him. I believe you. His eyes filled before he could hide it. She smiled faintly. But belief is not the same as rushing. No. So ask me again. His breath caught. Now Nora shook her head. Tomorrow. A laugh broke through his tears, quiet and disbelieving. Tomorrow. Yes. Why tomorrow? Because today is Hope's day. And because I want to know, you will still want the answer when there is no storm, no hospital, no crisis, no guilt pushing us toward something dramatic. Declan looked at her like she had handed him the whole sea. I will ask tomorrow. Hope ran toward them, curls, wild cheeks pink from wind. Mommy, Daddy, come fly it with me. She grabbed Nora's hand first, then Declan's. For a moment, the three of them stood linked beneath the lighthouse, the kite snapping above them, the ocean breaking white against the rocks below. Nora looked at Declan over Hope's head. There was no empire behind him now, no ballroom, no cruel chandelier light, no mother smiling in the shadows, only a man, a woman, a child, and the long, unfinished work of choosing each other with open eyes. Hope pulled them toward the grass. Declan let himself be dragged. Nora followed, her ring still warm in her palm tomorrow, waiting quietly between them.